Have you ever thought about how we're actually on the edge of the biggest wealth transfer in human history? It's a phrase that gets tossed around a lot, usually when people chat about inheritances from baby boomers to their kids. But here's the kicker. The biggest transfer of wealth isn't something that is just around the corner. It has been happening for over a decade, right under our noses. Let's break it down. Forget what you think you know. This isn't just about inheritances. It's about a massive, deliberate shift of trillions of dollars that has completely reshaped our global economy. To really get a grip on this, we need to rewind to 2008. Remember that? The world was teetering on the edge of a financial disaster. In response, central banks like the Federal Reserve in the US rolled out a policy that was meant to be our saving grace, quantitative easing, or QE. So, what's the official story? It sounds pretty straightforward. By printing a boatload of new money and using it to buy government bonds and other assets, they aim to pump liquidity into the economy, lower interest rates, and get lending and investment back on track. The whole idea was to jumpstart the economy and save it from a total meltdown. On the surface, it seemed like a necessary, even heroic, move. But here's the million-dollar question. What really happened? Where did all that cash actually go? That's the crux of it. The money didn't magically land in your bank account or mine. It didn't go to Main Street to help small businesses get back on their feet. Instead, it was injected straight into the financial system. The big winners? The major banks and financial institutions, the very ones that were at the heart of the crisis in the first place. This new influx of cash allowed them to stabilize their balance sheets, but it also ignited an unprecedented asset boom. Think about it for a second. When there's a flood of new money chasing a limited number of assets, what do you think happens? Prices shoot up, way up. This is the essence of the great wealth transfer. The cash from QE flowed directly into stocks, bonds, and real estate. Who owns the vast majority of these assets? You guessed it, the wealthiest 10%, and especially the top 1%. While the average person was grappling with job insecurity and stagnant wages, those who already had assets saw their net worth skyrocket. Let's dive into the stock market for a moment. From its low in March 2009 to its peak in late 2021, the S&P 500 skyrocketed by over 600%. Can you believe that? It was one of the longest and strongest bull markets in history. But was this massive growth because corporate profits and the underlying economy were 6 times stronger? Nope. It was all fueled by the cheap money from QE. Companies could borrow cash for next to nothing, not just to invest, but to buy back their own stock, which artificially inflated their share prices and executive bonuses. And guess who benefited the most? That's right. The wealthy who held most of the stocks raked in unimaginable rewards. Meanwhile, what was happening to the middle class? Your savings account was barely earning any interest, like close to 0%. The value of your cash was slowly being eaten away by inflation, which, let's be real, this money printing helped create. The cost of living, especially housing, began to climb. Why? Because that same cheap money made mortgages easier to snag, pushing up demand for homes. But wait, there's more. It also attracted big institutional investors who started scooping up residential properties, turning homes into just another asset class on their balance sheets. So here is the deal. The very policy designed to save the economy ended up creating a huge divide. On one side, you've got the asset owners, watching their wealth multiply to record highs. On the other, you've got wage earners and savers, whose purchasing power was being systematically dismantled. Your hard-earned money was buying you less and less each year, while the rich just kept getting richer by holding onto assets that were being artificially inflated. This wasn't some random side effect, it was a direct consequence. QE effectively transferred wealth from the public, through currency debasement and inflation, to the private owners of financial assets. It's a sneaky, insidious process. It doesn't feel like a tax, right? There's no line item on your pay stub that says quantitative easing deduction, but its impact is just as powerful. It's like a hidden tax on anyone who holds cash or earns a wage, and a massive subsidy for those who own stocks, real estate and other financial instruments. They say a rising tide lifts all boats, but QE created a tsunami that lifted the superyachts while swamping the dinghies. And just when you think the story ends there, it gets even more interesting. After over a decade of this policy, central banks are now facing the inflation they helped create. So, what are they doing? Raising interest rates, which is causing chaos in the very markets they inflated. But don't get it twisted. The game isn't over. A new chapter is unfolding, and it's called Central Bank Digital Currencies, or CBDCs. Now, CBDCs are being marketed as a more efficient, modern form of money, a digital dollar, a digital euro. But here is the catch. They also represent a monumental leap in the power of central banks. With a CBDC, every single transaction you make could be tracked and recorded. Imagine that. They could directly implement monetary policy on your personal funds. Picture a world where they could set negative interest rates directly on your account to stimulate you to spend, or even program your money so it can only be spent on certain things. Yikes, right? This isn't some far-off conspiracy theory. Countries around the globe, including the US and the European Union, are actively developing and testing these systems right now. They say it's all about efficiency and fighting crime, but let's be real, it's also the ultimate tool for control. It is the next logical step in a system that has been concentrating wealth and power for over a decade. The great wealth transfer that kicked off in 2008 with QE may be entering its final, most direct phase. So, what can you do about all this? The first and most crucial step is to get a solid understanding of what's happening. Acknowledge that the financial system isn't always working in your best interest. Educate yourself about how money, inflation, and central banking policies really work. Don't just accept the official narrative. Look at the data, connect the dots, and see how these macro policies affect your personal finances. Next, let's rethink what wealth and saving actually mean. If holding cash guarantees a loss of purchasing power over time, you've got to explore other options. This isn't about making risky bets. It's about preserving the value of your hard work. Historically, people have turned to assets that can't just be printed out of thin air. This is why conversations around things like gold, silver, and even decentralized assets like Bitcoin are becoming more mainstream. They represent a way to hedge against a system that seems designed to devalue your savings. This topic is super complex, and we've only scratched the surface. The key takeaway here is this: the greatest wealth transfer in history isn't some future event. It's your past, your present, and if we're not careful, it could be your future too. It's time to open our eyes, get informed, and start preparing for the world as it is, not as we're told it is. If this video opened your eyes, I'd love for you to hit that like button and share it with someone who really needs to hear this message. And for more deep dives into how the economy really works, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss an update. Stay curious and stay informed.